It is completely inaccurate, it is completely flawed, and it is completely outdated. The knowledge that we have today is far superior to the knowledge that we had in 1959. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. Today I'm going to be debunking the myth that 95% of all diets fail. But before I start, if you enjoy these types of videos, be sure to smash that like button so I know to make more of these types of videos in the future. And if you're either new to the channel or haven't subscribed yet, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell, as I will be uploading new videos every single day. Now, onto the topic at hand. The claim that 95% of all diets failing has been floating around for over 6 decades now, so that is why I'm making this video. But before I get into why exactly that claim is false, I'm going to explain how I'm going to break down this video. First, I'm going to be discussing where exactly the 95% figure comes from. Then I will explain who published the figure, why the 95% figure does not make sense today in 2020, why most people fail on diets, and what you need to do to succeed on diets. If there's a particular topic that interests you and you don't want to watch the entire video, I will be including timestamps in the description, so go ahead, look in the description section, and skip ahead to the section that you want if you don't want to watch the entire video. But on to the main talking points. The first thing I want to discuss is where exactly does that 95% figure come from? Well, that figure comes from a study that was published in 1959. It was a 1959 clinical study of only 100 patients, and those 100 patients all came from one clinic, and they were being treated for obesity at a nutrition clinic in New York during the 1950s. So it's an incredibly outdated study, and it was performed on an incredibly small sample size. Those are just two of the reasons why this study should not be relevant today in 2020. And the author of the study said so himself. In terms of the two people that were responsible for publishing this study, there was Dr. Albert Stonkard and Mavis McLaren Hume. Those were the two people that published this study. And Dr. Albert Stonkard was actually giving an interview not too long ago, and he was talking about the study. And one of the things that he had mentioned was that this study has very little relevance to the current understanding of the way that we treat obesity and how we control weight today. And he is surprised that that 95% figure is still being floated around today, because at the time when he published the study, he didn't think anything of it. It was a small sample size, and it was performed on a very extreme type of population. This was not the average person that was trying to lose weight. These were people that were morbidly obese, and they were pretty much statistical outliers. In 1959, if you were at the level of morbid obesity that these people were at, you were a statistical outlier. It's not like today where a larger percent of the population is morbidly obese. So that's another reason why this study should be taken with a grain of salt, and not only should it be taken with a grain of salt, but you shouldn't listen to this study at all, because it's incredibly flawed in terms of the small sample size and being very outdated. Just a couple of other reasons why it does not make sense to use this study today is because, as I stated a little bit earlier, it was done on an incredibly small sample size. There were only 100 patients that were included in this study, and 100 people really is not a lot of people. I have been coaching people for 16 years, and when I first started out, I worked primarily with people that wanted to lose weight. Over the last decade, I haven't really worked with too many weight loss patients. Most of the people that come to me now either have some type of physical dysfunction that they want to be corrected, or I'm working with professional athletes that are trying to improve performance. The number of people that come to me for fat loss today is very, very small. I would say they make up maybe 5% of my clientele. But when I was first starting out, the first, I would say, 6 years of my practice, I was working a lot with people that wanted to lose weight. And in those first 6 years, I probably worked with 300 to 500 people and helped them to lose weight. So a study that only has 100 participants is incredibly small, because if I used my own clients as a study, it would outnumber the number of study participants in this particular published study by 3 to 5. And if you were to include, let's say, 300 of my clients that lost weight and put them in that study, that 95% failure rate would shrink down to 25%. Because if you take 300 people that had success, 100 people that did not have success, that's going to be 25%. And when it came to that 100 people in the study, 5% of them did see results. So the number of people that would have seen results, if you take into account my clients plus the patients that were used in that study, would have been more than 75%, which is a far cry from the 5% success rate that this study claimed, which is why this study should not be valid today in 2020, and the author of the published study said so himself when he was interviewed. So I don't understand why this study is still being cited today, unless you are someone who is just trying to deter people from losing weight and you want to try and sell them on your magic program that you know the secrets that they don't. Aside from trying to con somebody into buying one of your nutrition plans, there's no reason to use this 95% figure because it is completely inaccurate, it is completely flawed, and it is completely outdated. The knowledge that we have today is far superior to the knowledge that we had in 1959 with regard to controlling weight and losing fat. So there's no reason why we should still be citing this figure today. Now I want to get into why most people fail on diets. The reason I said why most people fail on diets and not why do most diets fail is because if you go on a diet and you don't succeed, it's not the diet's fault that you failed, it is your fault. One of the main reasons why people fail on diets is that they look for a quick fix without properly educating themselves on nutrition. When you try to go for a quick fix, what's going to happen is you're going to go for some type of crash diet, and when you go on one of those crash diets, it's not going to be sustainable. You'll be able to do it for maybe a month to 3 months max. Once you get to that point though, you're going to fall off of that diet because it's impossible to sustain that type of a diet for a long period of time. And if your goal is to lose your body weight and decrease your body fat, then you need to do something that is sustainable over the long run, because otherwise what's going to happen is you're going to lose weight, and then once you lose weight, you're going to get off the diet, fall back into old patterns, and once you fall back into old patterns, you're going to put all the weight on plus more. So you want to do it the right way. You don't want to go on some type of crash diet. You don't want to look for a quick fix. You want to do something that is going to be sustainable throughout the rest of your life. Now, when it comes to sustainability, one of the other things is if you do go for something like a crash diet to get a really quick result, you are going to increase your stress sensitivity, and that is also going to increase your production of ghrelin. Ghrelin is your hunger hormone. If you go on a crash diet and you restrict your calories to a ridiculously low amount, what's going to happen is your levels of ghrelin are going to be elevated. When ghrelin is elevated, that is your body's signal telling you that you need to eat because you are in starvation mode. So the hungrier you get, the more ghrelin your body produces, and the more you go on these types of crash diets, the more you are going to have elevated levels of ghrelin in your system, and the more you're going to want to crave calorie-dense foods. And if your main objective is to lose weight, you want to try and minimize the levels of ghrelin that are circulating through your system. And the way to do that is to eat low-calorie dense foods, because the more low-calorie dense foods you consume, you'll be able to be in a calorie deficit while still consuming larger amounts of food. And by consuming larger amounts of food, you'll have the feeling of being satiated, as opposed to going on a really strict crash diet where you're consuming more calorie-dense foods and you're going to be hungry all the time. Because when you're hungry all the time, again, ghrelin's going to be elevated, it's going to cause you to binge eat, and then that's going to throw off all the progress that you made from the crash diet that you were on. So you're better off doing something more sustainable and consuming more things like low-calorie dense foods as opposed to going on a crash diet and consuming things like calorie-dense foods. Another reason why most people fail when they go on a diet is because they set unrealistic goals for themselves. I remember back in, this would have been 2010, because I remember I was working at a big commercial gym at the time, and I had this one woman come to me. She was severely overweight. She was well over 300 pounds, and I was asking her how much weight she wanted to lose, and she told me that she wanted to lose 100 pounds. And I asked her, okay, well, do you have a time frame for when you want to lose this weight by? And she said that she wanted to lose it in 1 month. Now, this is something that is going to deter a lot of people. If you think that you could lose 100 pounds in 1 month, that's going to deter you from working out and eating healthy, because after a couple of weeks, when you've only lost 2 to 4 pounds, you're not going to want to continue with the exercise program and the nutrition plan, because you had this inflated sense of what you can accomplish by thinking you could lose 100 pounds in 1 month. And this was also at the time when The Biggest Loser was pretty popular, so a lot of people that came to me back in 2010, they would watch The Biggest Loser, they would come to me, and then they would have these ridiculous goals that even on The Biggest Loser, they wouldn't even be able to accomplish it. If they were locked in a house with only healthy food and they had personal trainers training them 3 times a week and monitoring their meals, they still wouldn't be able to lose 100 pounds in a month. But somehow they thought that because they watched that show and they saw 1 or 2 people on the show do it, that they could also do it, which is incredibly unrealistic. If you set those types of unrealistic goals, it's going to be a huge deterrent for most people, as most people are not going to be able to hit those targets. You want to be able to set realistic goals. By setting realistic goals, you'll be able to actually accomplish them, and if you accomplish them, it's going to motivate you to build even larger goals on those goals that you've already built. So you don't want to set unrealistic goals unless you want to fail. Another reason why most people fail is because there's an overemphasis on calories. Yes, calories do matter, and yes, in order to lose weight, you need to be in a caloric deficit. There's no way around it. If you are in a caloric surplus, you're going to gain weight. If you are in a caloric deficit, you're going to lose weight. So if you do want to lose weight, you do need to be in a caloric deficit. However, just because calories do matter and you do need to be in a caloric deficit to lose weight, that is not the only thing that matters. Rather than focusing solely on calories, a better thing to do is focus on habits and food choices. If you can focus on habits and food choices, what's going to happen is you can develop habits over the long period of time. And while it will take longer for you to see results, you will be able to sustain it for a longer period of time. You may be able to lose a lot of weight over the course of 3 months if you go on a really strict calorie diet where you restrict your calories to an insanely low amount. However, once you lose the weight, your chances are, if you don't address those habits and you don't educate yourself on proper nutrition and better food choices, you're going to put the weight back on. So a better approach, rather than focusing on calories, is focus on correcting bad habits and also educating yourself on proper nutrition, because that is going to be much more sustainable over the course of your life as opposed to something like calorie counting. Another thing with regard to why most people tend to fail when they're on diets is they are on the wrong diet. A lot of people will follow diets because a celebrity tried it or they heard it from some type of Instagram or YouTube influencer, and they will just do it just because that one person got results. Well, every single person is going to be different. We all have our own biochemical individuality, and what that means is our bodies are going to respond different to different foods. So a diet that works well for me may not work well for you, and vice versa. And another thing with regard to biochemical individuality is we also have individuality when it comes to our taste preferences. If I give somebody a diet with all the foods that I love, and those are all foods that they hate, it doesn't matter how great the diet is. If they hate the foods that I give them on their plan, they're not going to be able to stick to it, because nobody is going to want to eat foods that they hate for the rest of their life. So when it comes to figuring out which diet is going to be best for you, you need to experiment with different diets, and you need to see which one you enjoy the most. Don't just go for the diet that's the most effective, but go for one that is also enjoyable. A diet needs to be both effective and enjoyable if you want it to work. If either one of those two factors is missing, you're not going to see results. So you need to find a diet that is both effective and you enjoy. If you don't enjoy it, don't eat it. That is the #1 rule that I give my clients when it comes to nutrition, because there are a ton of healthy foods that are absolutely terrific, but if you hate it, there are other healthy alternatives that you can consume that will actually bring joy when you are eating, and if you enjoy what you're eating, you're going to be stick to it. Just one example for myself, I absolutely hate kale. I find kale disgusting. Is kale a good vegetable? Yeah, it's a great vegetable. It's really healthy. It has a lot of vitamins and minerals in it. However, I hate the taste of kale, so I don't eat kale. Why would I eat something that I hate? If I hate kale and I love something like broccoli, which is also a healthy food, why wouldn't I just eat the broccoli and forget about the kale? Because at the end of the day, they're both low-calorie dense foods. One of them I enjoy, one of them I don't. So let me pick the low-calorie dense food that I actually enjoy instead of the healthy option of kale that everybody says you need to eat. Well, yeah, kale is great, but if you don't like it, don't eat it. You don't need to eat foods you don't like. That is one of the best pieces of advice that I can give you, and it's one of the best pieces of advice that I give every single one of my clients. And another reason why most people fail when they go on a diet is they don't modify their diet. The thing is, when you are very, very heavy, your calorie needs are going to be a lot higher than when you start to lose weight. So if you continue to consume the same amount of calories as you lose weight without modifying the number of calories, then your body is not going to respond the way you want it to respond, because you are going to go from being in a calorie deficit when you were, let's say, 500-600 pounds. When you get down to 300 pounds, if you're still consuming the same amount of calories that helped you get from 500 to 300, you might be in a calorie surplus now. So that same diet is not going to be as effective. What you need to do is, as you lose weight, you need to modify the amount of food that you're eating. And not only do you need to modify the amount of food that you're eating, but the types of food that you're eating. If you find that you are on a diet and you really enjoy that type of diet and you're seeing really good results, you're losing fat, your shape is changing, and you actually enjoy the foods that you're consuming, and then a few months down the road, you find that you're getting bored of that particular diet, you don't need to stick to that diet. You can try something else. You can go on a different diet and still see results. Every single diet will get you results as long as you are in a caloric deficit. That is the main takeaway. If you are in a caloric deficit, you're going to lose weight. It doesn't matter if you are following a vegan diet, a vegetarian diet, a paleo diet, a keto diet, a carnivore diet, a Mediterranean diet, a gallon of milk a day diet. As long as you are in a caloric deficit, any one of those diets is going to give you results in terms of weight loss. So if you are on a particular diet and you're seeing good results and you get bored of that diet, try something else that you like. As long as you're in a caloric deficit, you're gonna see results in terms of weight loss. But again, don't place too much emphasis on calories. While yes, you do need to make sure that you are in a caloric deficit, calories are not the only thing that matters. You also want to make sure that you are eating foods that you enjoy and that you're addressing the root cause of the issue of what caused you to gain the weight in the first place. Which brings me to the next point of why most people fail on diets, and that is that most people do not address the root cause of why they gained all the weight. If you ended up gaining a lot of weight because you ended up getting broken up with and you ended up getting depressed, and for you use food as a coping mechanism for when you get depressed, then fixing your diet isn't really going to address the root cause of your depression. So what you need to do is address your mental health. You need to be comfortable with yourself. You need to figure out what exactly the reasons are that made you gain the weight in the first place. Let's say you ended up gaining weight because you wanted to enter a bodybuilding competition, and you did a bodybuilding competition, and in order to do that, you had to eat a lot of food. And once you ended up stopping, you kept eating that food. Well, if you don't address the root cause of the issue, which was I ended up overeating in order to enter this competition, and once I left the competition, I never corrected my habit because I kept overeating, then you're gonna not see results in the long run. You need to address the root cause of why you ended up gaining the weight in the first place. If you just go on a diet and restrict your calories to a level where you're in a caloric deficit to lose weight, then that's just addressing the symptoms, which is your weight gain. It's not addressing the root cause. And in order to create permanent change, you need to address the root cause. Without addressing the root cause, your weight loss is only going to be temporary. So make sure that you address the root cause so that you can keep the weight off for the rest of your life and live a healthy life forever, not just for a few months while you're doing a temporary diet to lose the weight. Next, I want to get into certain things that you can do in order to see success when it comes to your weight loss journey. The number one thing that you can do is educate yourself on proper nutrition. That's going to be key. If you educate yourself on proper nutrition, then you'll be able to make better food choices. And if you make better food choices, you're going to be healthier overall. If you're healthy, you're going to feel better. If you feel better, the weight will come off, and it's going to be more of a motivating factor for you to continue on this journey of yours. Whereas if you don't educate yourself on nutrition, yeah, you might lose a little bit of weight, but then once you stop calorie counting or once you stop weighing your food, any of that type of stuff, you're just going to fall into old habits. So you need to educate yourself on proper nutrition. That way you have the education necessary to make these positive changes in your future. One of the other things, I already mentioned it earlier, is only eat foods that you enjoy. There are literally millions of healthy foods out there. You do not need to restrict yourself to the 5 or 6 magic weight loss foods that people are promoting out there. There's no such thing as a magic weight loss food. Every single food can make you gain weight. Every single food can make you lose weight. It all depends on whether you're in a calorie deficit or in a calorie surplus. If you're in a calorie surplus, then you can gain weight on kale. If you're in a calorie deficit, then you can lose weight on steak. It really doesn't matter what foods you're consuming. It's going to come down to calories in versus calories out, and the food choices that you make are going to be pivotal, because if you make food choices that you don't enjoy for the sake of losing weight, you're not going to be able to maintain that in the long run. Whereas if you make food choices that actually benefit you, you enjoy the way that they taste, you enjoy the way they make you feel, then that's going to be much better in terms of sustainability. Because if you like the way your foods taste and you like the way they make you feel and perform, then you're going to want to keep consuming those foods because of how they make you look, feel, and perform. That's why those are going to be the best foods to incorporate in your diet. You want healthy foods that you also enjoy. You don't just want healthy foods for the sake of eating healthy foods, because if you don't enjoy them, you're going to fall off the diet and you're just going to end up putting the weight back on. So make sure that every single food that you put into your mouth is something that you enjoy. If you don't like it, don't eat it. I cannot stress that point enough. Another thing with regard to making sure that you end up achieving success when it comes to your weight loss journey is set realistic goals. The first thing, or one of the first things that we learned when I ended up becoming a trainer, was to set SMART goals. What that means is you want your goals to be specific, you want them to be measurable, you want it to be attainable, you want it to be realistic, and you want it to be time-centered. So when it comes to setting SMART goals, you need a realistic goal. You don't want to have a goal of I want to lose 100 pounds in a month, or I want to lose 100 pounds in 3 months, because that's going to be unrealistic. A realistic goal to have in terms of how much you can expect to lose would be 0.5 to 1% of your body weight every single week. That's going to be a good goal. 0.5% is going to be incredibly realistic. It's not going to be overwhelming. Everybody can achieve 0.5% of their body weight lost every single week as long as they do the things that I just mentioned. If you're trying to get into more weight loss and lose more weight in a shorter period of time, you can do it, but it will be a little bit more difficult. And for some people, it won't be quite so sustainable. So you want to see what is going to work better for you. You can try doing a 250 calorie deficit. You could try doing a 500 calorie deficit. You could try doing 750, 1,000. Find out where is that sweet spot where you are losing weight, but you still feel satiated and you don't feel like you have very low energy. You want to find that sweet spot in terms of your caloric deficit. Some people can get away with a 1,000 calorie deficit, especially if they are 500-600 pounds, because their caloric requirements are going to be a lot higher. Whereas if you already are pretty close to your goal weight and you don't have that much weight to lose, a 1,000 calorie deficit is going to be incredibly high, and it's going to be very hard to sustain for most people. Whereas if you were to do something like a 250 calorie deficit, you're only going to lose half a pound per week. But if you're already close to your goal, let's say you're only 5 pounds away from your goal, well, in 10 weeks, you're going to accomplish your goal and you're going to be able to enjoy those 10 weeks instead of doing a crash diet for those 2 weeks, losing those 5 pounds, and then just binging and putting all the weight back on. You're better off to do a smaller caloric deficit than a larger caloric deficit if the larger caloric deficit is going to make you hate your diet and it's going to make you quit. You want to find the perfect balance where your calories are just low enough that you're losing weight, but not so low to the point where you are craving all these foods that are going to negatively impact your weight loss journey. Another thing with regard to achieving success on your weight loss journey is going to be improving your gut, because if your gut is healthy, it's going to make you feel better. If you feel better, you're going to be more likely to make better choices. Your gut is going to affect your brain. So if your gut is unhealthy, your mental state is also going to be unhealthy as well. And one thing that you can do to improve your gut is to decrease inflammation. By lowering your weight, that will help to decrease inflammation. By removing all of these really bad foods, that will help to decrease inflammation. Things like excess sugar consumption, excess alcohol, all of those things are going to trigger inflammation in the body. So if you can remove those inflammatory foods, then you will achieve more success, because if your gut is healthy, your brain's going to be healthy. If your brain is healthy, you can make better food choices. One thing with regarding to this point right over here is when it comes to inflammation, different foods are going to react differently to different people. This is true with the diet, and this is also true with regard to inflammation. Somebody can consume, let's say, something like kale and have no inflammation. Somebody else can consume kale and have inflammation from that food. So you want to see which foods are going to make you feel better. And in order to do that, keeping something like a food journal would be really beneficial, because if you can track all the foods that you eat and then write, what did you feel and how did you feel before you ate it? What did you feel and how did you feel during the consumption of that food? And then what did you feel and how did you feel immediately after eating that and 2 hours after? If you can pinpoint which foods make you feel really good, make you feel energetic, give you good mental clarity, and don't make you have any adverse effects like bloated gut, joint pain, any of that type of stuff, then those are going to be good foods for you to incorporate, and those are the foods that you want to incorporate more of into your diet, because that's going to allow you to achieve better results in terms of not only weight loss, but the way you feel. And that's even more important than the weight loss, because if you feel good, you're going to want to keep doing what you're doing. The last thing with regard to seeing success, I've already mentioned this in the last point about why most people fail, and that is addressing the root cause. Without addressing the root cause of your weight gain, you're not going to see permanent results. You need to address the root cause, because otherwise you're just putting a band-aid over a very large scar, and that is not going to fix anything at all. If you have issues with either depression, with relationships, with poor coping mechanisms in place, you want to address all those. You want to fix your mental state. You want to fix your relationships. You want to figure out better coping mechanisms for when you are depressed or not feeling your best. By doing that, you will be able to better achieve results because you've addressed the root cause. You didn't just put a band-aid on a large scar. That's pretty much it for today's video. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to smash that like button so I don't make more of these types of videos in the future. And if you're either new to the channel or haven't subscribed yet, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell, as I will be uploading new videos every single day. That's it for today's video. Thanks for tuning in, and I will see you again tomorrow.